I hate to say it, but sometimes you just gotta tip your cap.
You are Locked On A's, your daily Oakland A's podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, A's fans, and welcome to Locked On A's, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast where we follow your Oakland A's as long as they are indeed rooted in Oakland. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please, I'm begging you to use my nickname, which is Sully. I've been a baseball podcaster for well over a decade now, and this is my sixth full season here at the Locked On Podcast Network. My first as the host of Locked On A's. I'm also the host of Locked On MLB. It says right down there. If you're watching the video, it says watch next, Locked On MLB. Please check out the show that I did today, where I talked about the integration of the stats, Negro League stats, into Major League Baseball. And this fellow right here behind me, Turkey Stearns, is now fifth in the all-time batting average career leaders. And I think it's a wonderful thing. Hear my take on it on Locked On MLB. Follow us here at Locked On A's on Twitter, or whatever the hell it's called now. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And if you are using any of our social media, use that hashtag EverydayA's so we get a sense of who's listening to us every single day. Hey, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Supply House. SupplyHouse.com is a reliable way to get parts fast. Shop for your next plumbing, h-vac, or electrical job and get fast shipping from coast to coast at SupplyHouse.com. There are going to be days where the A's win thrilling games like they did in the wild game against Colorado. There are going to be games where everything fires on all cylinders, like the game that happened yesterday in Tampa Bay. Then there are going to be dumb games like the game that happened against Houston, where it was that one bad inning just derailed the game. Then there's going to be games like today. Today, in some ways, is really frustrating if you're following the A's. The walk-off 4-3 loss to Tampa Bay, because in the end, they didn't really do anything wrong. Oh, let me get the banner out of the way there. I mean, I was saying the other day, avoid the big inning, that one bad inning where they put up a crooked number, and don't make stupid mistakes, and try to create runs where it's not based on a home run. And guess what? They did all of that today. They did all of that. If you take a look at the A's, how they did today. Estes came in with an ERA so big it had an area code on it. He pitched okay. He pitched 5 innings, 2 hits, 2 walks, 1 run, left with the lead. Okay. Ferguson didn't pitch particularly well, and Alexander didn't pitch great. They each let up a pair of runs. But Adams wiggled out of jam. McFarland wiggled out of a jam. And the Rays didn't have a huge rally at any one point of the game, which is true. There was no, there were no multi-run innings there. And the A's got 3 runs, and they didn't hit a homer. And we'll get to that in a second. But you had, Blade got a triple. Andujar, who seems to be fitting in just fine, thank you very much. He got 2 more hits, and he's been a great pickup so far. And Andujar got a sac fly to put the A's up 1-0. And then when was it Lau or Low? I can never remember. He tripled. All right, they tied the game. But Andujar, once again, RBI single. He drove in 2 of the A's 3 runs, gave the A's the lead. The Rays took the lead on the Paredes double, but then Blade singled and then wound up scoring. And you know what? That was you take a look and you say, okay, they manufactured runs. They played smart small ball. They didn't leave tons of runners on base. And while the bullpen wasn't on top of their games, they stranded a bunch of runners too. And then came the moment. Ninth inning, they get the leadoff double. And, but once again, Andujar is on, and they can't seem to get him home. And then you just had, we all saw what happened. Top of the ninth, and Geloff hits a deep, deep drive to center field. Out goes Jose Siri. And by all accounts, that was going to be a go-ahead 2-out home run in the ninth inning. And Siri times it perfectly, catches it, and brings it in. Even if it hit the top of the wall, it would have been an RBI double, but it was going to clear the wall. It was going to be a go-ahead home run with 2 outs in the ninth, hand the ball to Miller, and the A's win the first 2 games of this series. And tomorrow afternoon, is borderline house money. And Siri makes a great catch. I mean, really, there's nothing you can do about it. Geloff did what he was supposed to do. He hit the ball out of the park. And when the other team does something like that, you go, okay, fine. And then Rosario's double to lead off the ninth was a little excuse me. It wasn't like he, hit a rope into the gap. It was an excuse me. And then Siri comes up and gets the hit. Siri giveth and he taketh away. So you look at that, and they did everything. If you're an A's fan, they got a decent start. The bullpen wiggled out of some jams and prevented the big, huge inning. They got timely hits. They didn't rely on the home run. And the other team just did a couple of things spectacularly. I mean, it's funny. This should have been a game that absolutely devastated me watching it. But the Astros game where Schumann, did the bonehead, ending of a Benny Hill episode, got me more mad because that was a winnable game and they won it stupidly. A's fans, tell me, where was the stupid part of this game? Where was the part you go, oh, dude, you're an idiot? I mean, I didn't feel any today. Sometimes you got to tip the proverbial cap. Sometimes you got to say, all right, the other team won. The other team won. And you just hope that they can dust themselves off and get back in. This, by the way, is yet another example of why it's critical to win game 1 of a series. Because if you have a game like this and things get, things fall apart, you're playing catch up. But the A's are going to play an early game tomorrow. There's a couple of things that are not quite clear yet. And I'm not sure if that should make me worried or not, because I really, really, really want them to win this series. Let's hear from our friends over at Supply House. Order supplies from the website that's made for skilled trades. Find thousands of parts from hundreds of brands in just a couple of clicks at supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com gives you 24/7 access to a huge selection of plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with fast delivery anywhere in the U.S. You need help with an order? Get industry-leading after-sales service from their friendly and knowledgeable customer support team and talk to a real person every time. What a concept! And there's great news. For plumbers, technicians, and contractors, being a pro has its perks. Trade industry professionals can join their free TradeMaster program for free. And you get free shipping, serious discounts on many, many of your orders, and over 100,000 pros already trust the TradeMaster program to deliver results. Apply for your membership today and get a competitive edge on every order at supplyhouse.com/TM. Save money and time when you order online. Order plumbing, HVAC, electrical supplies from supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Hey, where do you get your sports news? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you to bring the biggest sports stories right to your computer. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channel app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Well, the A's do indeed play at 1 p.m. Eastern time, which is 10 o'clock in the morning here. So I'm gonna be playing it uh in my classroom. Um, Not sure who the pitcher is yet at this point. The A's are, it's that great TBD pitcher. Not sure who it's going to be, and I hope we're not doing a bullpen situation here. But fortunately, they didn't use Miller and they didn't use Ursak, so they have some of their top people there. Fly just went right past me. JD Davis is going to be coming off the bench after a hit by pitch. He was in the starting lineup today. Let's hope he can get back in. Diaz is back from the 60-day injured list. That's a good thing. And farewell, Tyler Nevin. We hardly knew you. Tyler Nevin played. Well, yeah, remember he got a couple of big hits not too long ago, but off he goes, designated for assignment. Um, Not quite sure what we're looking for here, but I'll tell you something that was kind of, I don't know, slightly encouraging is the fact that when you looked around, okay, the Yankees. I know we're not supposed to root for the Yankees, but the Yankees beat the Angels 2-1, and the Mariners walked off the Houston Astros 2-1. Now, why do I care about that? Well, it's because of the little things. The fact of the matter is, we're almost in June. We're almost in June, and they're the little tiny goals I want the A's to reach. I want to first step, get to June, not in last place. So win tomorrow, then they're going to be going. If they win tomorrow, then that the worst case scenario for the A's is finishing May tied for last place, which not great, but at least they're not the worst team. And if they win tomorrow, they know they're going to be playing at least 400 ball. Again, these are not the things you put on banners, but when you consider how disastrous things have been since the 4th of May, that if they can finish the month still basically riding this wave and not being as bad as people thought they were going to be, that's really good. Now, here's something. Let's just say these two things happen. Let's just say the A's win on Thursday afternoon. It's possible. You know it. I know it. And let's also say that the Astros lose. And I believe they do play tomorrow afternoon. They're going to be playing Seattle. And so let's just say those two things happen. The A's and their brilliant TBD pitcher wins, and Gilbert, who's better than Arrighetti, let's say Gilbert wins. Then, and by the way, the Angels and the Yankees are playing, and so by the way, the Yankees were playing while the Angels were playing, we don't have to worry about them. But if those two things happen, the A's win and the Astros lose, then the A's would only be half a game behind the Astros. Again, little things. I bet a lot of people pick the Astros to win the American League West. So stay on, people. We'll be 1/3 of the way through the season and meeting these little goals and making it so, you know what, things could be okay. Now, by the way, should the A's make any additional movements? Well, why not go for Jorge Lopez? You see what Jorge Lopez did? He's actually a pitcher he hasn't been pitching that badly for the Mets. He's bounced around his career between the Brewers and the Royals and the Orioles and the Twins. And last year he was a pitcher for the Orioles. Now he's playing for the Mets, and he threw his glove into the stands. He's super frustrated. He said, I'm playing on the worst team in baseball. And that didn't go over well with the Mets. They DFA'd him. So go pick him up, A's. Come on. Bring him aboard. Have a little more bullpen depth. And you can honestly say to him, hey, Jorge Lopez, you left the Mets, and now you're with the A's, and you are not on the worst team in baseball. We can prove it because the Angels are worse at this point. Hey, let's talk to our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's number one sportsbook. And let me tell you something, there is no better time in the year to be a sports fan than right now. You got Major League Baseball going on. That's cool. The NBA Finals. Well, we know the Celtics are in. Will it be Dallas? Will it be Minnesota? Will Dallas be in the Stanley Cup final against, or will it be Edmonton? Will it be New York, the Rangers? Will it be the Florida Panthers? Are we going to see those traditional hockey matchups between Dallas and Florida? I don't know. Neither do you, but you might as well get your bets in at FanDuel. FanDuel wants to give you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, it's America's number one sportsbook. This is a quick reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channel app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day, with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channel app. You ever realize how fragile our notion of reality is? I know that's a weird question to ask on a sports podcast, but one of the single most popular figures in the history of the Oakland A's is Dennis Eckersley. And to the point when they have the mascot race, they have giant caricatures of Raleigh Fingers, Ricky Henderson, and Dennis Eckersley running the race around the Oakland Coliseum. To the point where he is such a beloved figure in A's history that all you got to do is take a look at him. You know exactly who he is. And the last time the A's ever won a World Series for the Oakland A's, it was indeed Dennis Eckersley who was on the mound. Well, actually, he was at first base when they clinched because it was a ground ball he covered first. And he gives a little fist bump when they won the '89 World Series. Dennis Eckersley basically reinvented with Tony La Russa the closer position and created the situation where he was only going to use a closer for the ninth inning. And what that meant was suddenly save totals, the lead leaders in saves went from like 20, 25 saves to 40, 50 saves. And partly because La Russa figured out if you create a bullpen where you have a seventh inning guy, an eighth inning guy, and a ninth inning guy, you can use them virtually every night and shorten games. You know, you have to have a good starting rotation to get you into the sixth or seventh inning, but then everyone has their assigned roles and the closer comes out firing out BBs. And Dennis Eckersley, who was an all-star pitcher with Cleveland, mainly with Boston, but his career started to fall apart in Chicago. And before the '87 season, Dennis Eckersley was basically washed up. And no one would have been surprised if he would have been a 1 year in Oakland and out type player. He was failing as a starting pitcher. He'd gone through a lot of issues in his life, especially alcoholism, and he was pretty much at the tail end of his career when the A's acquired him for 3 minor leaguers who didn't amount to piddly poo. They put him in the bullpen during that weird 1987 season that I talked about the other day, which was the first full season of Tony La Russa running the show. And there were a lot of players on that team who were stars, and it was very clear that something interesting was happening there. But Dennis Eckersley was brought in. He was essentially going to be a starter. And when that didn't work, they stuck him in the bullpen. But they already had a closer at the time. And I was thinking about that closer today, Jay Howell. Because it was clear that Tony La Russa, who was always the smartest person in the room, just ask him, he'll tell you, was trying to figure out a new way to manipulate the bullpen situation. Instead of having your closer come in the seventh and the eighth and ninth, and all of a sudden they're not available for a couple of days, he was trying to figure out how to set up the bullpen in an interesting manner. And he had his closer in Jay Howell. He had a very strange career, Jay Howell, and one where bad things kept happening in glorious moments, and an injury led to a directly led to another player becoming a Hall of Famer. He was a pitcher who was picked out of. He was drafted by the Reds, and he wound up being on the Reds organization. He went to the Cubs, and he found himself with the Yankees. In '84, Yogi Berra was the manager. He had 1 year and like 2 weeks where he was the manager under Steinbrenner. And Yogi saw that Howell could be a setup man for Dave Righetti. And he was pretty effective in 1984, that he gave the Yankees some bullpen depth. But remember, this is when George Steinbrenner, and the biography of George Steinbrenner has been so rewritten, and the past has been so rewritten and changed over time, because in the 80s, he was this incredibly destructive force, and the Yankees couldn't win because of Steinbrenner. And if any chance he had to trade away a young player that he didn't instantly recognize to bring in a veteran, he would do that. And Howell was packed to go to the A's. And he was part of the package that wound up bringing Ricky Henderson to the New York Yankees. Albeit, okay, the pretty good pickup that they got there. But the package that the A's got back from the Yankees for Ricky Henderson had some interesting players. They had Jose Rio, who was on that '87 team and turned into a fine starting pitcher. Eric Plunk, who turned into a very good middle reliever. Stan Javier, who was a very good fourth outfielder and started many, many games. And Howell. They got 4 quality players for Ricky Henderson. And the first year that Howell pitched in Oakland, he was an all-star. He saved 29 games, which was really good back then, had a decent ERA, threw 98 innings of relief, and he made the all-star team and gave the A's a little bit of hope. And in 1986, he was still the closer when Tony La Russa took over. And he had 16 saves. And back then, 16 saves was a lot. But La Russa was scratching his chin saying, how could I redo this bullpen? And in 1987, Howell once again made the All-Star team, which was played in Oakland that year. But he was starting to become ineffective. And then things started to really collapse. In June, he wound up having a couple bad months, including one where he had an ERA in the 5s, which is unacceptable in any role, but especially as the closer. And it's funny, in the All-Star game in Oakland, he let up a couple of runs in the 13th. And after the All-Star game, he just absolutely fell apart, including the All-Star game. He lost or blew a save in 6 out of his next 7 appearances in July. And he had a horrific ERA post All-Star game. And eventually he was shut down because he said, this guy's hurt. And then La Russa needed a closer, and to do a new experiment of how to handle a closer, which is, we're only letting you go 1 inning. He handed the ball to that washed-up starting pitcher named Dennis Eckersley. And for the rest of the 87 season, Eckersley was the closer and pitched pretty well. Now, Howell was no longer needed, and once again, he was shipped off on a major trade, the one that sent Alfredo Griffin and Jay Howell and Jesse Orosco. It was a 3-team trade with the Mets. Bob Welch wound up coming to the A's and eventually becoming a great number 2 starter and a Cy Young Award winner. Now, oddly, 2 of the players that the Yankees sent to the A's for Ricky Henderson came back to haunt the A's in the World Series. Jose Rio won the World Series MVP for the Reds in 1990. But Howell himself became a closer for the Dodgers. Now, he had kind of a nightmarish postseason, one where he was suspended in the NLCS because he had some pine tar in his glove. And then when he came back, he let up a walk-off home run to Mark McGwire in Game 3. But he did bounce back, and Lasorda showed a tremendous amount of faith in him by having him throw a 2 1/3 inning save in Game 4, which it was clear that La Russa was trying to put a middle finger in the face of the press who said that Howell couldn't do it anymore. Well, with that, Howell, was a World Series closer, and he made the All-Star team the next day. But I really, really look at his career, which again, guy made 3 All-Star teams, made a bunch of money, got a World Series ring for his trouble. But if he was effective in 87 after that All-Star game, when he absolutely fell apart and La Russa was trying to figure out the Rubik's Cube of their bullpen, if he was effective, La Russa may have kept him as the closer and said, here's what we're going to do, Jay Howell. You are going to come in and only throw the 9th inning. You are only going to throw the 9th inning. And I'll be able to use you every day if I want to. And he wound up having Eckersley and another kind of washed up starting pitcher in Rick Honeycutt to create that 1-2 punch in the back end of the bullpen. But it very well could have been a Rick Honeycutt and Dennis Eckersley setting up Jay Howell. If only Jay Howell didn't become incredibly ineffective and ultimately injured after the 87 All-Star game. And then Eckersley would have been, hey, he was an all-star pitcher who actually pitched a few years out of the bullpen. He would have been essentially been a Greg Swindell instead of being a great Hall of Famer. And it would have been Jay Howell maybe who have fallen in. And maybe the system that La Russa set up, that you only throw the 1 inning, be completely effective that 1 inning. Maybe they wouldn't have been as effective as Eckersley. Maybe Eckersley was a great Hall of Fame talent and happened to fit perfectly into La Russa's system. We'll never know. We do know that the job belonged to Howell. He was good enough to make an all-star team, and he suddenly lost the job. And with that, an unlikely player became one of the most beloved figures in the history of the Oakland A's. And the other became, oh yeah, that guy. He actually wound up pitching well against the A's. This is how thin reality is. Hey, we're doing a live. See who said something in the comments. Oh, my mom's listening to me. Hi, Mom. Thanks so much for listening. Well, there you go. See if the A's can win this series with a win tomorrow. I had ideas of a sweep dancing in my head, but we may have to just settle for a series win if they win tomorrow. That beloved pitcher TBD is going. So there you go. Talking about a game where you just have to tip your cap. This has been Locked On A's. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.